Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In for August 31st, 2020. Today is Monday, which is Professional Development Day, and my topic for today is avoiding burnout. And I think this is especially timely for the last day of August and the beginning of September and this transition that we're going through as the pandemic just continues to drag on, and a lot of us are starting to feel some of the negative impacts. We're not starting to. I mean, we've all felt the negative impacts, but I think we were all kind of hoping. We are all kind of hoping that by autumn, as autumn approached, things would change and things would improve and get better. And coming to terms with the fact that might not happen is putting additional stress on a lot of us. And I'm seeing a lot of social media posts about burnout and stress. And so I just wanted to talk today a little bit about what you can do to try to cope with the level of stress and avoid burnout. And it's something that I struggle with myself. So I think it's important for us to talk about that. And like part of the reason I started this whole thing 4 months ago, wow, was it 5 months ago, is because I wanted to check in with folks and see how you were doing out there and make sure you're doing okay. And if you need help, guide you or help you get whatever help it is you need. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I don't have any housekeeping items. And because this is a check-in with you, the whole episode is a check-in with you. I'm not going to do my standard, how you doing? Because what I'm looking for from you and all the listeners out there is when you're done listening to this, I'm curious what tips you have for others around dealing with the level of stress that we're all handling right now. Things that you've personally found to be effective or useful in coping with the level of stress, of avoiding burnout. I have some things that I've thought of. I've done a little research to find other tips and I won't say tips and tricks, but just good things to balance your life out a little bit. And the other thing is, I'm coming from my perspective. These are the things that are helpful for me and the things that I have available to me. And I understand not everybody's going to have these things available to them. So if you're in a situation that's drastically different from mine, I'm curious what you're doing to cope with what's going on today. And I have a viewer. Hi, Abdul. Hope you're doing okay. And feel free to share your tips for how you're coping with the stress these days. So let's get into it. So I kind of hoped, and maybe foolishly, 5 months ago, that by the time the school year rolled around for us in the US, that we'd be approaching some sort of normality, that our kids would be going back to school in person. And obviously that's not the case. But I think a lot of us had that in our mind as the seasons change and we prepare for change, that things would be improving and getting better. And we're still kind of where we were several months ago. There's still a pandemic going. A lot of us are still taking it very seriously, wearing masks, trying not to go out too much, all that kind of stuff. And that does weigh on us from a cognitive standpoint. A lot of us are still working 100% remote, and that's putting stress on us. We're trying to adapt to the change, but adapting to change, especially if you've been in the workforce for 20, 30 years, that's really hard because it's a pretty significant change. And especially if you're the kind of person who likes being around other people, this especially impacts you. So I thought I would go over a few things that I found helpful. The first thing is you have to be vigilant for your own mental health and how things are going with you. And sometimes it's not that obvious because it's really hard to observe what's going on with you from your own internal mind space. And the best way to kind of get an idea of what's going on is to talk to somebody else, honestly, and get their external third party opinion. Now, since that's not necessarily always available to you, some things to look out for. The two things that I notice is exhaustion, just generally feeling tired, even if you're sleeping. And the second is irritability. You're just constantly on the edge of yelling or getting angry with people for reasons that are probably not that don't make sense. You're on that edge. So being aware of those things puts you closer to being able to deal with those things. So what are some general guidelines. Number one is sleep. You have to be getting sleep. And I know sometimes getting sleep is hard if you suffer from insomnia, but like keeping a regular sleep schedule, even though we're in this weird situation, is going to be huge. Now, because I have children, I'm kind of forced into that regular sleep schedule, but I understand if you're not in that situation, it can be easy to let things just get real loosey goosey and, go to bed at 3 a.m. and get up in the middle of the day. And that's fine if you do that consistently. But really, the best thing for sleep is to be consistent in your sleep patterns, not necessarily when you go to sleep and when you wake up. So I really am trying to adhere to when I go to sleep and when I wake up. When Abdul has a question for me, ask permission for mentioning you in my Vault Cert exam tip. Also, would like to mention your Pluralsight course. Absolutely. You can totally mention those things. I don't mind at all. After sleep, another big thing is exercise. And I understand if you're kind of locking yourself up in your apartment, that could be a little bit difficult to do. But I will say that exercise is huge. I know personally, I start feeling more stressed when I don't get out and do something. And my thing is running and cycling. So that's just the thing that works for me. But I know that's not for everybody. Some people like lifting weights. Some people just want to go for a walk. Some people like playing sports. Obviously, it's hard to play a team sport right now, but maybe there's an individual sport. I feel like tennis would probably be really good for this because, tennis, you're across the court from each other. As long as you're not going to shake hands when you're done, that could work out pretty well. So you definitely have some options there. And then finally, a good diet. I know I've heard jokes about the COVID-19 putting on 19 pounds because we're in our houses and we're just kind of eating not the best food, or just, staying up too late and eating and drinking. I've been kind of working on that myself. And the exercise helps, the sleep helps, but also keeping a half decent diet. I'm not saying that you have to go, vegan, raw, keto, whatever, but keeping a moderately good diet, getting your fruits and veggies actually does help with your overall mood. So that's 3 things that you can do right off the bat. Another big one is limiting electronics and doom scrolling. So, limiting electronics, read a physical book. It sounds weird, but it is different. Just not being in front of a screen for a while. What else? So that's really important. Not doom scrolling. So you can fall down a hole on Facebook or Twitter or any of the other social media things of bad news. And you keep scrolling because you want to know more. You have to just self-imposed limits. Like, okay, I'm going to read Twitter, but I'm only going to do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And then I'm going to stop and go do something else. And just stepping away is huge. Another thing is you just have to accept you're not going to be as productive as you were prior to the pandemic. I know that's happened to me, and it's partly because the circumstances around the house changed, but also just, the additional cognitive load and stress of what's going on keeps me from being as productive. And I'm accepting that and planning accordingly. So I'm trying not to sign up to do too many things because I know I don't have the same productivity level. I'd also recommend, and I did a whole video about this, I'll put a card up here somewhere, about getting a hobby. Find a hobby and make it be something that has nothing to do with your work. My hobbies right now is pretty much running. So that has nothing to do with work. And it gets me exercise. So that's like a win-win. But I've also been thinking, I also started making sourdough bread. And I know that's like the typical thing, right? But I honestly did start making sourdough bread. And I find that nice as an additional hobby. And I started pickling things because it's all stuff I can do in the house. And it encouraged me to eat a little healthier. And it has nothing to do with my day-to-day work. So like thumbs up for all of that. Now, if you do find you're getting into a difficult headspace, the best thing you can do is talk to family and friends. And I know you can't always do that in person, but you do have to talk to someone. Now, some people feel embarrassed or like they can't talk to their family and friends about what's going on with them mentally. There are a lot of good services out there that offer up counselors that you can talk to if you're working for an employer that has some sort of program. I know my wife works for a school district and they have a program where you can talk to someone for free. It's included as part of their benefits, and you may already have that. If you don't, there's like low cost options, or there are some free options out there as well for getting the online counseling. And I know it's not in person and it's not as personal, but it is an available option for you. And speaking to a professional just kind of makes sense. It's kind of like We use professionals for so many other things in our lives. Why would we not go to a professional when we're dealing with our mental health, right? Now, on the other side of things, and this is probably where I'm going to wrap up, I would recommend, if you haven't checked in with people, with a few different people for a while, to just check in and see how they're doing. Sometimes just doing something small and nice for another person makes you feel better and can also help them if they're getting into a difficult headspace. And just check in with your family and friends to see how they're doing right now, because I feel like for whatever reason, the transition from one season to another, as things start to change and we move from summer to autumn, mentally we're preparing for that change and we're hoping things get better. And if they don't, a lot of people are going to feel disappointed and that burnout is going to start building. So check in with your family, check in with your friends, and check in with yourself. So that's my daily check-in for today. That's all I've got. Tomorrow is Terraform Tuesday, so please join me then. Until then, stay healthy and stay safe, everybody. Thank you.